Welcome to SL Tonight RPG Night. Tonight, we're following one of the most famous maps in English literature. A map drawn in blood on a scrap of shirt passed down through 3 centuries of desperate men who mostly died trying to use it. The book is King Solomon's Mine, published in 1885 by H. Rider Haggard. It was written in 16 weeks as a result of a bet. Haggard wagered his brother he could write a novel as gripping as Treasure Island, which had come out 2 years earlier. The billboards plastered across London when it was released called it, without a shred of modesty, the most amazing book ever written. Publishers had rejected it for 6 months. When it finally came out, the printers couldn't keep up with demand. The story follows Alan Quartermain, hunter, guide, reluctant hero, the man who Haggard based on the real-life African explorer Frederick Solis. Quartermain has a map. It leads through the desert, over the mountains, through a kingdom called Kukulana Land, and into the mountain where King Solomon's diamond mines have sat untouched for 3,000 years. Our explorer has that same map, and Forest Cave at the end of it is right here. Let's go in. The Gate. In Haggard's novel, reaching this point required crossing the Solomon Mountains, described as so cold at the summit that one of the party's companions, that Hottentot tracker named Vint Vogel, simply froze to death in the night. He found him stiff in the morning, with a peace on his face, as though he had simply decided the cold wasn't worth fighting anymore. 3 men went to those mountains. One of them didn't come back out. That's a Haggard pledge to his reader from page 1. It's not a comfortable adventure. Things go wrong here. People die. The map is real, but the map doesn't protect you. Haggard knew Africa. He traveled there as a 19-year-old during the Anglo-Zulu War. He'd seen the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a massive ancient stone city in southern Africa that no one in Europe could explain, and those ruins became the kernel of King Solomon's mine. Who built it? Where did the wealth come from? What civilization had been here and then simply vanished? The Lost World genre, Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World, Edgar Rice Burroughs, all of it begins right here at this gate, with the question, what's on the other side? This gate is that question made stone. The explorer steps through. Notice the walls here, carved from the mountain itself, not built with blocks. This is the living rock that Haggard describes when the party finally penetrates the mine. A chamber, he writes, hewn out of the living rock. That phrase carries weight. It means whoever made this was cutting down into the earth, not constructing on top of it. The mountain is the building, the room is absence. Somebody decided that there was already here was worth carving away instead of building around. This is the design logic that goes all the way back to the first computer dungeon, Colossal Cave Adventure, written by Will Crowther in 1975. Crowther based his cave on Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, the longest cave system in the world, which he and his wife Patricia had spent years mapping in the early 1970s. The passages in the game were so faithful to the real cave that when actual spelunker played it years later, they could navigate the bed quilt region of Mammoth Cave on their first visit, just from game memory. The cave was already there, the game was the map. King Solomon's mines were already there too. Solomon didn't build them. Someone before him cut them. The diamonds were waiting. Our explorer is walking through someone else's work. 3 paths. This is the oldest decision in dungeon design, and it matters which way you go. In the novel, Quartermain and his party face choices like this constantly, and getting one wrong doesn't just slow you down. The wrong choice in the Solomon Desert meant dying of thirst. The map had an oasis mark. Miss it, and that was the end. On the 3rd night in the desert, they were out of water. One of the party was already hallucinating. Vint Vogel, the tracker, smelled water where no one else could, dropped to his knees and dug with his hands until he found a spring. That's what survival in Haggard looks like. Not heroics, specific knowledge. Reading the land itself like a text. In Colossal Cave Adventure, the 1976 text game that gave the adventure game genre its name, the junction was the great test. The cave had a section described identically in every direction. You're in a maze of twisty little passages, all alike, 10 rooms. Everyone described the same way. Passages that didn't connect in the direction you walked. The game had removed the information you needed to navigate, on purpose, as a kind of controlled hole. The solution was to drop items, leave your axe in one room, leave your food in another. Build landmarks out of your own inventory. The maze became navigable once players started treating their possessions as a map-making system. Players drew these dungeons by hand on graph paper. Circles for rooms, lines for passages. They left sessions with sheets covered in a scroll. Names like Hall of Mist, Complex Junction, Wits End. A journalist in the late 1970s described a late-night computer lab where someone was playing Adventure for the first time. Strewn across the desk like relics from a party were dozens of roughly drawn maps. Our explorer checks his map again. He takes the left passage. He moves towards the armory. The armory. Rooms like this exist in the novel too. Not labeled armories, but supply points. When the party reached the Kukawana Kingdom, they were given weapons by Infudus, the uncle of the rightful king. Spears, shields, specific tools of the specific culture's warfare. The weapons weren't random, they were meaningful. They told you who built this place and what they were prepared for. That's the rule of good dungeon room design. The room answers a question about the people who made it. The torture chamber implies a regime. The kitchen implies hunger. Armory implies threat. External, expected, prepared for. The questions the room asks are, what were they afraid of, and were they right to be? In Rogue, the 1980 dungeon game from UC Santa Cruz that gave procedural generation to the gaming world, the rooms didn't have context. They were randomly assembled every time you played. No two dungeons were the same. Weapons appeared without history. You found a sword and had no idea if it was magical or cursed until you used it. What Rogue understood was that the unknown is half the tension. Pick it up and find out. The Haggard party would have understood that. They crossed the desert on the basis of a map that might have been nonsense. They entered a kingdom on faith. Every decision was pick it up and find out. The chest in this armory is not locked. The explorer opens it. There's something useful inside. He takes it. The map that drives King Solomon's minds is one of the novel's great details. It was drawn 300 years before the story takes place by a Portuguese explorer named José de Silvestre, who had reached the mines but couldn't get out again. He wrote the map on the scrap of his shirt, in blood, his own, because that's what he had. His servant carried it back, passed through the Silvestre family for 3 centuries until another Jose Silvestre staggered out of the desert into Quatermain's camp, dying of fever, and pressed it to his hand. A map in blood. 300 years old, that is your starting inventory. Haggard understood that maps are promises. They say, the thing you want is real, and here is how to reach it. But they don't say what happens on the way. The map shows the destination. Everything between you and it is something the map doesn't know about yet. That is why players have always loved maps. The space between where you are and where the map says to go is all yours. There is something about a bridge over a chasm that every culture in human history has understood as a test. You have to commit. There is no half crossing. Once you're on it, turning back is as dangerous as going forward. Bridge doesn't let you hesitate in the middle. Haggard built moments exactly like this throughout the novel. The desert crossing that should have killed them, the moment passed that did kill one of them, the approach to the Kukuana capital with thousands of lawyers watching to decide if the strangers live or die. Each crossing was a one-way door. Commit or don't go. In Colossal Cave Adventure, there was a troll on a bridge, added by Don Woods, the Stanford student who expanded Crowther's original game into the version most people know. Woods was a devoted Tolkien reader, and the troll was his tribute to that tradition. Across, you had to deal with the troll first. The bridge was a checkpoint, a toll. The right answer, once the players figured it out, was to throw the troll his own axe, which he'd been using to block the passage. Give the monster its own weapon back, and it lets you through. That is actually good mythology. Give the threshold guardian what it wants, and it becomes no obstacle at all. The chasm below our bridge goes down too far to see the bottom. That's intentional. The darkness underneath is not a feature of the cave, it is a feature of the imagination. The map says cross, the map doesn't say how deep it is. The explorer crosses, he doesn't look down at it. The lower hall. In the novel, the approach to the treasure chamber passed through a place called the Place of Death. A vast cavern where all the dead kings of the Kukanas sat around a great stone table, preserved over centuries by salacious water dripping over them and gradually turning them to stone. Petrified kings, each one seated in his place, each one robed and crowned as he had been in life. Quartermain wrote, "We stood there and stared at them in silence for some moments, each of us feeling that we were in the presence of something that belonged to another age. That feeling, being somewhere that belonged to another age, is what every good dungeon aims for." The Japanese PC-88 and X68000 dungeon crawlers in the 1980s understood this intuitively. These were fortress and cave games made for home computers that were more advanced than their American equivalents. Machines with actual sound chips, color palettes that could do something meaningful with atmosphere. The games they produced had hand-painted art, dungeon corridors that felt architectural instead of abstract, music that underscored that you were somewhere old. Most of these games never reached English releases. Foreign players who got hold of import copies played them without manuals, without guides, mapping as they went, figuring out the grammar of the place purely from what the rooms showed them. Defensive architecture reads the same in any language. A narrowing corridor approaching a central chamber means the same thing in Japanese, English, or Portuguese. Someone important is at the center. The halls are built to slow you down before you reach them. Our explorer is slowing down now. The map indicates it's close. He pauses in the hall and reads the carvings on the wall. The library. Every civilization that has ever existed has had to answer the same question. What do we keep? And where do we keep it? In King Solomon's mines, the knowledge that unlocked the whole adventure was preserved in the most fragile possible medium, a scrap of shirt written in a dying man's blood. And before that, it had traveled as oral tradition among the Kukuanas themselves. The mines exist somewhere in the mountain past the place of the dead king. No one knew where exactly, but they knew it was there. The knowledge survived because people cared. Libraries are what you build when you decided the knowledge is too important to trust to memory alone. You carve it, you write it down, you put it somewhere that can outlast the person who knew it. In the early text adventure games, the library was the game itself. Colossal Cave Adventure was, at its core, a library of description. Will Crowther wrote 66 rooms at first, each one a text entry, a paragraph, a description of the space. Players read the library by moving through it. The map was made a link. The 1977 version that Don Woods released from Stanford had 140 locations. Each one was an entry. The player's job was to build the index, figure out how entries connected, map the links, construct the whole from the parts. That's what a library is. Not the books, the system for navigating. Library's books are in a language our experts can't read. Explorer can't read, but he can see the layout. He can see what they thought was important enough to store. He copies a symbol from the reading stand onto his map. It might matter later. There's a detail in the actual novel that almost nobody talks about. Gugul. Gugul is the ancient witch advisor to the tyrant king Twala, described as impossibly old, withered, crouching, navigating the world like something between a human and a predatory animal. She's the one who knows the secret of the treasure chamber door, the only living person who does. When Quartermain and his companions finally force her to lead him to the mines, she cooperates, not out of fear exactly, but because she's already planned what she's going to do to them once they're inside. He's the dungeon's most dangerous feature. Not a monster, a person. A person who knows the room better than you do and has been waiting. In an early dungeon game design, a guardian was a creature. Sometimes it was a mechanism, a locked door with a puzzle, a pressure plate, a gate that closes behind you. Sometimes it was the guide you trusted. The original CCA had drawers that you access it. They appeared randomly, anywhere, and could not be reliably avoided. In the game's philosophy, the danger isn't always where the map suggests. Stay alert now. Past the library. The Silent Ones. In the novel, the approach to King Solomon's treasure passes beneath three enormous stone figures carved into the cliff. Ancient beyond memory, seated in judgment, watching the road that leads to the mine. Quartermain writes that they might be the three false gods for whom Solomon went astray. Nobody knows their names. Nobody knows who carved them. They've been here since before anyone who's alive now can remember. They mean nothing. That's what makes them terrifying. The guardian that doesn't move is worse than the guardian that attacks. The guardian that attacks tells you its rules. The silent one holds its rules in reserve. Haggard fills his novel with this kind of dormant watching danger. The Kukiana kingdom lives under Gugul's witch hunt, sudden, arbitrary executions of anyone she decides is a threat. No trial, no warning. You don't know you're in danger until you're already dead. The political atmosphere of the kingdom is a guardian chamber too. You're never safe. You don't know the rules, you keep moving. In Rogue and the dungeon games that followed it, the monster alphabet was part of the terror. You learned that D meant dragon, and the first time you forgot that and wanted in a room with a D in it, you died. Permanent. No save state. Start over. The monster had been sitting there, not moving, until you came closer. The Guardian Chamber is the room where the dungeon reveals what it's been holding back. Our explorer does not approach the Silent Ones. He knows better than to disturb the things that are already watching. He moves through the chamber carefully, along the far wall, and does not look back. Here. The treasure chamber in King Solomon's Mines is one of the great room descriptions of Victoria literature. Haggard gives it to us piece by piece, the way the lamplight would actually reveal it, not all at once, but section by section as the light moves. First, a stack of elephant tusks, floor to ceiling, extending back to darkness so deep they couldn't see where the pile ended. Quartermain estimated at least 400 or 500 tusks of the finest quality. That alone, he notes, would make a man wealthy for life. Then 20 wooden boxes along the opposite wall, each filled with gold coins stamped with Hebrew letters. Then a nook, and in it 3 stone chests, 2 sealed, 1 open. The open chest was mostly full of uncut diamonds. Second, sealed chest, they cracked it, was full to the top. Third chest had the largest stones of the lot. An old Gugul behind them, cackling. There are the bright stones you love, white men. Take them, run through your fingers, eat of them, drink of them. Haggard wrote that men stood there shrieking with laughter over the diamonds. Genuine, helpless laughter at the absurdity of it, at the realization that all this had been here waiting for 3,000 years. And Solomon himself never came back for it. Solomon never got them. Says Sylvestre, who drew the map, never got them. Every man who came before Quartermain died trying. This is the dungeon's final honesty. If the treasure doesn't protect you, the ghoul is already creeping back towards the door. The stone door operates on a counterweight mechanism. 30 tons of living rock, a simple lever pressed at a secret spot sets it moving, slowly and evidently. And Gugul knows where the lever is, and you don't. In every dungeon game, there is this moment, you have the treasure, and suddenly the room changes. The thing that was waiting activates, the exit closes. Shut. Explorer pockets what he can, his hands are full, here's something in the passage behind him. Quartermain and his companions were trapped in the treasure room for what they believed would be the rest of their short lives. The door had closed, 5 feet of solid living rock. The Kukiana army couldn't break through it. Infidus waiting outside did know the secret. Nobody alive knew it anymore. The lamp was running low, then it went out. In the dark, with 8 matches left between them and starvation, they searched, and it was the air that saved them. Captain Good noticed a draft, the faintest movement of air in a dead room. Follow the air. The air is coming from somewhere. Somewhere is outside. They found a passage. They followed it through tunnels, through an underground stream, through intersecting corridors with no map, through a final narrow hole in the ground, barely wide enough to fit through, and out into starlight. Haggard frames it as rebirth. The imagery is deliberate. They emerge from the earth like something newly made. Everything before the chamber was one life. What comes after is another. The escape from the dungeon is always rebirth. That's why it matters. You didn't just get the treasure. You survived the place when the treasure map where the treasure was. Those are different things. This is what they brought out of King Solomon's mind. Sir Henry's brother, the man they were searching for in the first place, was alive, injured, waiting at the edge of the desert. He got the largest share of the diamond. Quatermain and Good each kept their third, enough to make a man comfortable for the rest of his life. Quatermain notes a characteristic understatement. The mine itself, they never found the entrance again. The small hole they crawled through to escape, they searched for it. They couldn't locate it. The stone door with a counterweight mechanism, Ghoul was the only one who knew it, and Ghoul was crushed under 30 tons. The Kukuana king, Ignosi, let them leave, and then declared that no other white men would ever be permitted in the Kukuana. The whole country, the whole civilization, the whole mine went back behind a closed door. That's what's remarkable about Haggard's ending. The adventure closes behind them. The treasure is real, and they have it, but the place is sealed. Nobody else goes back. Nobody profits from the map they followed except the men who went. The dungeon doesn't stay open after you leave. Colossal Cave Adventure understood this too. The final goal wasn't just to collect the treasures, it was to get out with it. The game ended only when you returned to the surface, to the small brick building at the edge of the forest with everything you carried. The cave stayed where it was, waiting for the next person who found the grave. Our explorer has what he came for. He looks at the map one more time. The map shows where the treasure was. It doesn't show the way back. The way back is something you figure out for yourself. He folds the map. He walks away from the gate. He doesn't look back this time. That's our RPG night take on King Solomon's Mine. One of the novels that invented the Lost World genre, launched a century of adventure fiction, and gave every dungeon designer who came after it a blueprint for what the deep place would feel like. The map is written in blood, the gate is stone, the treasure is real, and the person who knows all the secrets is not on your side. King Solomon's Mine was published in 1885 and is fully in the public domain. Read it free at Project Gutenberg right now. And if you do, pay attention to the descriptions of the chamber. Haggard was an architect with atmosphere as much as a storyteller. He built rooms to feel. What classic story or game map should our explorer follow next? Let us know in the comments below. We got maps for all. This has been Felix Lebeski here on SL Tonight RPG Night. Stay weird, stay curious, and never trust a guide who's been there before. Good night.